Bang.
Here we go. Here he is. Look at that. Wow. Would you look at that? 249. Nice.
Episode 249. Bang.
Yep. That is a bang. That's a nice run. We've already had a nice run going here, man.
That's right. August 30th, 2023. Welcome to the Rebel's Edge. I'm out in Hollywood at the Dream Hotel. But don't come out here and try to, it's mainly a dream. It's very cool. I was gonna shoot up at the pool, Pete, but they had too many celebrities up there. So they said, well, we're fine with it, but if the celebrities come into the background, they're not going to be fine with it.
Yeah.
So sorry, but they have special celebrity areas and everything here, Pete, at the Dream. And so, by the way, my friend Vaughn, who runs the Dream Hotel, thank you, Vaughn. I'll make sure we mention things in social media and so forth, but he's a king, Pete. Yeah. The guy, he looks like he was a linebacker, and he did play at Fordham, but he set up the Dream Hotel in New York, a couple of them, and now they moved him out here to Hollywood, and here he is, the Dream Hotel Hollywood. So congratulations.
I'll tell you what's not a dream for me today is this dog hurricane that's going into Florida. I got a house. Jared's been there, our producer and our guy who does all the fun things. And he's been there, so he knows it, and he knows how close to the water we are, which we love. But it was actually more of the bay side that was coming over, John, because they were saying the blue moon and this reason and that reason and the heat of the water and blah, blah, blah. It ain't pretty.
No, I am sorry. I am sorry. No. I saw it this morning, Pete. I saw the videos that people were posting of what the storm looked like offshore. Yeah. And then, like you say, it's a combination of that real high water that you get with the blue moon and the surge, but from the bay, not from the Gulf. Yeah. So that's weird. But wow. Well, let's hope for everybody's sake that the damage is minimal. Yeah. But it's a pretty damn big storm. You look at that thing on radar, it's huge.
It's crazy. It is.
Well, you're tuned into the Rebel's Edge, folks. We talk about macro, fantastic futures, several different stocks, and we're going to get to all that right now, starting with Macro Minute. And today, Pete, my Macro Minute is that they revised the GDP data down. Now, this is another one of those like yesterday where bad news is good news because it's also taking the 10-year rate down to 4.10 because I guess people look at this and they say, hey, maybe the Fed doesn't have to do any more moves because they've done enough damage.
Well, that's always a possibility. I'll take the other 30 seconds of the Macro Minute and say this. Consumer confidence, that's a bit of an issue right now. They missed. And then when you look, John, at job growth, and that didn't look all that great. That was slowing down. You look at the pay growth. Well, it's slowing as well. So there's a lot of things right now that we talk about day in and day out that are affecting other parts of the market. And certainly, I think when you look at some of these numbers from the macro perspective, you understand what's going on with the 2-year. It's back under 5, which is a good thing. But the 10-year is still pretty sticky above 4. It's not where it was, but it's still hanging above 4 the entire month of August.
Yeah, it's been just crazy to see it, Pete. And hopefully that fever does break. I'd love to see it get back down under 4 again. But I guess I don't want to root for bad news, but I think we've got some coming up. Let's talk about fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
So the fantastic futures, I'm going to say, is crude oil today, Pete. And I'm not saying it's making a huge move, but it might. And here's why. The basically deputy prime minister in Russia says that Russia is going to cut oil exports in September by 300,000 barrels per day versus what they were exporting in June. That's a big drop. So they're participating in OPEC Plus, and they're taking supply down. You know what that means, folks. Supply and demand. You take supply down, demand stays constant, prices go up.
Yeah, I'm piggybacking right on top of that, John, because I think you're exactly right. I mean, we talked about OPEC a couple of different times. The first million barrels that they cut back on, it seemed to be digested pretty well. The second million barrels they stopped exporting, then all of a sudden there's a bit of an issue, right? I mean, all of a sudden we started to see that price of crude start to move to the upside, and now you just tag this on there as well with the Russians, 300,000. I mean, these are numbers that start to get pretty daggone big. And like you said, the supply comes down, the demand remains the same. Those prices are going to be going up, up, up. So look at those gas prices now, because you might not be seeing those same prices into the not too distant future. We might be back to $4 a gallon pretty quick. I know they're over that already in Oregon, in California, and other places. But for the rest of the country, those that have been at 330, 350, it ain't going to be there much longer.
No, in fact, Pete, I think Chicago mid-grade is $5 right now. Right now, 489 or 499 for the low, regular. And out here in California, I've already seen 6. So yeah, it's coming back, folks. Get ready. Yeah. That's some of the bad news. This is more of that bad news. Ambarella. So these guys are basically semiconductor chips for HD video and things like that. They earned or lost only 15 cents versus the 21 cents they were expected to lose. So if you want to view that as good, okay, I'll say it's better than expected. And they guided below consensus. You guide lower, they are going to just crush you. And that's what they're doing here, Pete. And the CEO said near-term environment, very challenging. Customers are now more aggressively reducing their inventory. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here, but all of that is bad. In other words, visibility going out into the future, folks, is that there's not as much demand. And they're saying that, it's the environment right now. People are just hoarding cash.
Yep. And you talked about the inventories and being much more mindful about those inventories. That's definitely an issue. You also brought up, John, the outlook. You cannot do that. I mean, obviously you got to report what you got to report, but when you give that report to folks, they're going to turn and burn and start selling. This is one that I might keep a close eye on, though, John, because when you look at the balance sheet, it's pretty pristine. When I look at a lot of the other aspects of this company, I think they're sitting in a good spot. That being said, the market right now is not good for them. And that is part of the problem because of those inventory things that you brought up and so forth, and a little bit on the weaker demand side. By the way, 5 times normal volume for a full day in the first 2 hours. That says a lot. But like I said, I'm a little bit intrigued by this one, John, because I'm looking where it is, what it's trading at, what its PE is, and all the rest of it. And it might become something interesting, at least to keep an eye out for it, because any turn to the positive, and this is a stock that's fairly cheap that could be one of those that starts to rip to the upside again.
I agree. And I would not be surprised, Pete. Yeah. So I'm joining you on that outlook. Anything with the HD video and so forth that these guys do, I think, that's something that hasn't gone away. All right, let's talk about HPQ. We used to call it Hewlett-Packard, of course, Hewlett-Packard Compaq, if you want, in some cases. So they have the printer business, and then you've got the computer business and all that. And they separated them years ago. But in this case, we're talking, it's down 9%. The Q3 was basically a match for what the bottom line estimate was. They missed on sales. They cut their guidance. You already know from the previous one, you cut your guidance, they're going to hit you. So it's close to double digits down. And they said similar things, Pete. We expect another quarter of sequential growth, but the external environment has not improved. I want to leave you with that thought and then ask Pete, do you think you maybe stay on the sidelines with this one, or is this one also one you'd consider buying here at these levels?
I don't think you got to chase it, John, but with all the numbers that you just talked about, and I would just add again, that outlook, it becomes something that we all focus on, right? We love what they say during the quarter, and we have a lot of good sense of what that quarter is going to look like. Sometimes we're surprised, but most of the time, it's pretty close to what we're expecting. But when you have that kind of outlook that they gave, that is an issue. Now, the one thing I will say is This thing, John, has a price to earnings. The PE right now for HPQ is in the single digits. So that part of this looks pretty good. The debt that they've got is extreme, so that doesn't look so good. And, they mentioned a few things. One of the things that I really like, though, about this company is look at the free cash flow. It is absolutely outrageous, and that was one good thing they were able to point to, and their free cash flow is huge. So that would be a reason, along with the PE, that I'd at least keep an eye on this thing. And I'd say, you know what, maybe there's a little bit further downside here based on what we know about the environment. But I think this could be a name that you might want to own. And, oh, by the way, they actually pay a pretty decent dividend as well.
Well, those are both good reasons to at least put it on your watch list.
Yeah.
All these stocks, of course, we can't pull the trigger for you, folks. We can tell you what our outlook is and whether or not it's scary or whether it might be scared money is getting out of the stock now, and maybe some of us want to start getting in. Yeah. All right. How about Alkermes, Pete? ALKS. This one, they have something that really can help people because they have this stock Vivitrol. It's a drug, I'm sorry, Vivitrol. And what it does is it helps you, it keeps you from relapsing into alcohol or drug abuse. So if you give somebody this drug, that's what it was designed to do. Well, Teva, a big generic drug manufacturer, I believe out of Israel, Pete, wanted to start making generic versions of this, meaning that, once it comes off patent, anybody can make it. Well, these guys fought them. Today, they came up with a settlement and the stock was up 5%, 6%. Right now, it's pushing towards 9% gain for ALKS.
Yep, and I think they'll still have plenty of power there, John. And as a matter of fact, there's generics out there. It's interesting to see what they did here in the litigation that went on, and they actually did finally settle. I'd say whatever that settlement was is being interpreted as pretty damn good because Teva, we all know Teva, it's been around for a really long period of time. They do a great job with what they do. They even do some of their own drugs, but they're primarily generic, and that's what they do, and they're pretty damn good at it. But I like this. John, talk about a specialty, very interesting area here when we're talking about drugs that are out there that are actually there to help alcohol and drugs. It makes it all very interesting. So I think it's something that I think I'd keep a close eye on this one. I'm not going to chase this stock, though. It's been on a nice run. I don't think you got to chase this one. I think this is one of those that it settles back down, back to where it probably should be. But this is very exciting news because this is something that's been going on for a while, and that's been depressing the stock at least for a while.
Truly. And they're getting that nice jump on, I think, 3 times normal volume already so far today, Pete. All right. So Box, what do these guys do? Box is cloud-based content management and so forth. They are down hard today. The Q2 earnings beat on bottom line, matched on top line. The board had to authorize $100 million share buyback, Pete, because the guidance was pretty soft. Now, it wasn't as bad as some of these others, but also their CEO said this. So we've got 3 different CEOs saying the same sort of thing about the environment right now. Ongoing economic factors have impacted our customers' IT budgets. So does that sound like a gangbusters economy right now? I'm not saying the sky's falling. I'm just saying anybody that says that this is as good as it gets is wrong. There are a lot of people holding cash. That can be good when they finally start putting it out there, but they're seeing some bad things on the horizon, Pete.
Right. You got HPQ talking about it. You got Ambarella talking about it. Now you got Box talking about it. So, yeah, I would say that this is not just a trend. This is the factual backdrop that we all are trying to figure out. How is the economy really? And we get all these different numbers and this and that. But I think these companies kind of spell it out pretty clear about what things really look like right now. Now, this is a company, like you said, John, they did lower the guidance, and that wasn't good. But the deceleration of the revenue, and that's a problem. Oftentimes you could see, well, going forward, we're going to have a little bit of an issue with this or that. But, this is a company that we're looking for their revenue to grow. It's not that big. It's about 6%. It's not bad. But now they're saying, well, it's going to decelerate down to about 5%. Well, no one likes to hear that. It's just like hearing anything about any of these outlooks whenever you lower that outlook, people's only reaction and first reaction is, you know what, palms out, I'm going to step away for a little while and maybe wait and see where it pulls back to and get it at a much better deal. We'll see what that ends up being. But, down 8%, is that a huge number? It's a big number, but it's not huge. I think I'd keep an eye on this one as well, John. This one's the least of my interest, though. I think the HPQ and the Ambarella are a lot more interesting at this point in time, especially the beating that they're taking, specifically in Ambarella down 20+%.
Yep. I'd say that this is one of those, Pete, the cloud-based management. Yeah, that makes sense for your content and all that. But is this something that a lot of businesses have to really stay on top of, depending on how much content they're putting out, depending, how they deliver and so forth? Anyway, let's talk sports, Pete, because we're getting ready to dive into NCAA football, right?
Yeah, we had 0 week last week, just so everybody knows, and we all know, of course, because you had Notre Dame playing Navy. That was kind of the biggest of them all, but USC was out there against San Jose State. But this is officially now the first week of college football. I don't know how they figure that all out. But in any case, so Thursday night, John, if you take a look, there are games everywhere. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I know Saturday will still be packed in, but I think I wanted to pick out 2 games that really stuck out for me. And the first one is Florida at Utah. Now, the reason I think that's an interesting one, 2 major conferences going up against each other, right? And Utah's had some really good teams of late. They're at home in Salt Lake playing against a Florida team that no longer has the quarterback that everybody was so excited about last year, who's now with the Colts and a very high pick. That's no longer there. And by the way, Utah is ranked. They're ranked number 14. You know where Florida's ranked? Nowhere. You can't find them. Nobody has any expectations right now for Florida, at least in the top 20, 25. They're nowhere to be found from the SEC. And maybe it's because they're reloading and doing all those kinds of things. But whatever the case, this could be a really interesting first game. But the one I like, John, how about 2 Big Ten teams going head-to-head on a Thursday night? I will be there on the sidelines. Nebraska, Minnesota. It should be a lot of fun. Minnesota's got some high aspirations. And Nebraska, which has been a great traditional football team, and even though the last decade has been terrible, they still got their all home games sold out streak intact. Well, we sold this one out as well, John. They're calling it a sold out gold out. They want everybody to wear gold, and it should be a lot of fun. I tell you what, they travel well. So wherever that Nebraska tickets are going to be, you're going to see Big Red there in a big way, and that ought to be a lot of fun. But, the Gophers have really improved a lot. I think that they're one of these teams that, if the ball bounces their way, they could be very interesting. If not, they're just going to be 5-5, 6-6, actually, is what they'd probably end up being. But a 500 team. Now, if it bounces their way, they got a brand new quarterback. He was a freshman last year, played a little bit. This kid's got the best arm, I think, in college football. Doesn't mean he's the best quarterback, because he's not. But he's got an arm like, when you watch the game, you're going to see, John, this kid is really, really special. 6'4", about 220. His name is Kalaiak Manis. I mean, say that 10 times. He's a great kid, though. 8th, a good kid, has a great arm. It's going to be a lot of fun. But what do you think? Does Matt Rule have what it takes to be able to turn Nebraska in 1 year? And actually, not even a year. He just got there in January. But what do you think? Because he did it at Baylor. He did an amazing job at Temple, got him the Baylor job when they were literally just cast off because of a lot of issues off field. And he had to almost restart the program. Did a great job. Then he failed in Carolina. NFL's a lot different than college. But he's back here at Nebraska. What do you think of this one, John? Does he have what he needs, and did he have enough time to put in enough guys that he can compete?
Well, that latter part of your question, Pete, is what it all comes down to. I do not know how many people, if any. I imagine every team does get some off of the portal, but I really don't know how many great players Nebraska may have picked up off the portal, or how many freshmen might be impact players. I don't know that yet. You just described the quarterback for Minnesota that, he's entering his sophomore year. So at least we know a little bit more about him, even though he didn't play a lot last year. He played. So I like the Nebraska-Minnesota setup. I think it's great that you've got real teams playing each other. Not that the lower tier teams aren't real, but when you see, Appalachian State playing Michigan or something like that, yeah, every once in a blue moon they can knock them off. But other than that, it's kind of pathetic that, a team that is stacked like Michigan obviously is, and they're not playing Appalachian State, but they are playing a couple of the little sisters of the poor.
Yeah.
Michigan starts off with 3 games that I don't think, even though Harbaugh is still crying about it, I don't think he needs to be on the sideline for those 3 games.
They should be fine.
Yeah, they should be fine. But the one that I'm really excited about is Shakur Sanders over at Colorado, because, you've got TCU coming in. That's not a Thursday night game, folks. That's Saturday. But they're a 21-point favorite over Colorado.
Wow.
Now, I was there last year, Pete, when Cal got upset by the Buffalo, and they were, I think, a 16-point favorite, and Buffalo crushed them. So keep in mind, you're talking about lowlanders going up to altitude, because Boulder plays at about, I think, 6,000 feet, give or take. It's harder to breathe. These are great athletes, so they'll be able to do it, but it's harder for them to recover and be ready for, not just the next play, but the next set of downs and all the rest. So could they shock the world? Perhaps. Is it likely? No. That's why they're a 21-point dog. And because we've never seen these players together before, because Dion basically emptied the portal, bringing these guys in, including his son, Shadur Sanders. But the kid did great at Jackson State. I think we're going to see some great numbers out of him this year. Maybe not against TCU, but I'm very anxious to see how Colorado stacks up after a 1-11 season last year.
Yeah. And Deion Sanders, he's getting a lot of credit for a lot of things, and the hopes are getting higher and higher and higher, John, which is great. And he's part of that because he's a guy who's been talking it up too. But that would be a huge move for them to be able to get up there. And they've got some of the horses. It's a matter of, what do they look like together, right?
Yeah.
Are they working together? Does everything fit right? Do they have the right game plan? And TCU, to your point, that's been a power for a while now. They're pretty damn good every single year. And because of that, it's going to be a challenge. But I still got a lot of faith in Dion. I think Colorado's going to do a little bit better than a lot of the projections that I'm seeing out there that are a lot more negative than that. John, how about Ohtani? We've been talking about him, and we love what he's been able to do. So I'm going to pose a question to you, because as a GM, you just got to wonder, what do you do with this guy now? He had the UCL injury, right? And so that's affecting him. He can't pitch. By the way, it doesn't mean he can't swing the bat. The guy is still swinging the bat. He's leading the MLB in home runs with 44. By the way, he's got 94 RBIs and batting 307. So I'd say if he's just a batter, he's pretty damn good. But he's not. He's a batter who also pitches, who's pretty damn good at pitching. But this is the second time now that he's had issues with the elbow. So I guess the question I'd have for you, John, is if you were out there and you were looking on the free agency market, I'd say I'd still be interested in Ohtani. I don't care if he's pitching or not. I'd love him to pitch. But if you were a GM of whomever, the Minnesota Twins, and we went after him, would you let him pitch? I mean, I think that's a legitimate question these days, because that could affect things in a big way, from a negative way, injury-wise in the future, because he's still young, but he's getting a little bit older each year, obviously. He's been there a couple of years. But what do you think? I mean, this elbow's an issue. Do you try to convince him, hey, man, I don't know about you pitching anymore? Or do you say, you know what? If you heal and you're all the way healed, go get him. We're with you.
There's got to be great ways, Pete, to monitor how that UCL recovery is going, and how, if it means that you only pitch him for 5 innings, maybe in games, instead of trying to squeeze out 6 or 7. There's got to be ways that they could monitor his progress with that UCL that you're talking about. And you're also right about him as a designated hitter, which is what he's doing now. Kid's a great athlete, and he's been doing that all year, by the way. But that you don't get 98 ribbies just hitting on the days when you pitch. That's not how it works. But he went 3 for 5 last night. He had a double and a couple more ribbies last night. So does he get to 100? Very likely. And, he's got a whole month really to go before the season's over. Again, his season's over as far as pitching. But as far as hitting, he could still get up there, Pete. And if he got hot near the end here, he could still push towards 115, 120 on the ribbies. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see that. But I would still, if I were the GM, I would let him pitch if we can monitor it properly. And again, only put him in for a limited amount of time. And, who knows, Pete? There have been pitchers in the past that were starters that they just made closers. This wouldn't be a bad thing for him either. I mean, if he only pitched 7, 8, 9, that wouldn't be so bad. It'd be a less strain on him. But the kid's going to be a DH. There ain't no doubt about that because his bat's too good. And like you say, 307 with 44 home runs. Yeah, I think the kid can play.
Yeah, not too bad. And I'm glad you brought up last night because I think a lot of people, when they heard about this injury, thought, well, he's done for the season. Well, he might be done pitching, but he ain't done hitting. And he continues to play. He's hitting really well still. He still leads all of baseball with home runs. He's in the top, whatever it is, 10 or 15, whatever it is in RBIs. And to your point last night, he went 3 of 5, had 2 RBIs. I mean, that's a pretty damn good night for anybody, right? I mean, and meanwhile, it's just another night for him, quite honestly. I mean, that's who the guy is. He's got 124 home runs in 3 years. So he's doing a lot of things right when he's up at the plate. And I love seeing him, and I love your idea. I hadn't even thought that over, but the idea of maybe just being a closer. I mean, the guy's throwing close to 100 miles an hour on a fairly consistent basis. So if he's healthy enough to be able to do something like that, I'd actually almost prefer that, John, I think, over having him start and maybe play 4 or 5 innings, whatever it is. I'd rather see him close up maybe the final 2, maybe 3 innings. I think that'd be great. So I think he's still going to get a pretty damn good contract. Not what he was going to get probably, but a damn good contract. And the right team, whoever the team is who signs him, they did it right. I don't care what they're paying him, whatever it is, they're doing it right because that guy's special.
He is special. He's fun to watch. I love when he puts on the samurai headgear, Pete. After each home run, of course, folks, you've seen it. Probably if you've watched the Angels at all, you've seen it. And the players on the team love him. Yeah. So he's also a guy that fires up other players. So he's not one of those guys that's poison in the locker room. Instead, it's kind of an infectious enthusiasm with Ohtani. Well, that's going to do it for us today, folks. Remember, episode 249 in the books. We'll be back tomorrow. Pete will actually be back with Glenn Fife. I will be on the track with Adam Carolla. We'll be putting up some content from the Willow Springs out here in the racetrack in California with Steve Saline of Saline Motors, who makes his own supercars. He supercharges Mustangs and Ford trucks, Pete. And we're going to have some great interviews with him and with Adam Carolla out at the track tomorrow. So Pete will have to handle the duties with Glenn. And
I feel better about things right now, John, because I felt like I might have lost my invite to that whole thing. I don't know what the hell happened. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we'll be joining Adam tonight over in Malibu, Pete, just to make you jealous, too, for a nice dinner on the water. Well, he's Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. We appreciate you joining us, folks. Tell a friend about the program, and we'll be back 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.